penalties. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation. Again, it's bicameral legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserved. Gentlewoman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, H.R. 3668, the Counterfeit Drug Penalty Enhancement Act of 2012, would increase the maximum criminal penalties for trafficking in counterfeit drugs. Counterfeit drugs are a serious public threat to all Americans for several reasons. To begin with, a person who unknowingly consumes a counterfeit medication may be harmed by dangerous but undisclosed substances in the drug. As a Food and Drug Administration representative testified at a hearing before the Judiciary Committee's Crime Subcommittee, a counterfeit drug could be used making ingredients that are toxic to patients and processed under poorly controlled and unsanitary conditions. Also, an individual who consumes a counterfeit drug is deprived of meaningful treatment that can respond to life-threatening illnesses. Consider, for example, a patient suffering from a heart ailment or a child who is desperately fighting an aggressive, life-threatening infection. The consequences of either consuming an ineffective counterfeit drug are blatantly obvious. By receiving these counterfeit drugs instead of the real medications that they require, each of these individuals would be denied receiving the effective treatment that they must quickly be given in order to address their illnesses. Finally, the proliferation of counterfeit drugs poses a grave nationwide risk to the public health and safety of all our citizens. Current technology and distribution channels present the real danger that a very large quantity of these counterfeit drugs could enter into the marketplace where they can injure and possibly risk the lives of many Americans before they are even detected. The Food and Drug Administration is working with medical product supply chain stakeholders to respond to this emerging threat. But we need to do more. It is critically important for us to reinforce our criminal law so that it clearly addresses the national menace presented by large-scale intentional trafficking in counterfeit drugs. Under current law, trafficking in counterfeit drugs receives the same criminal penalty as trafficking in other less dangerous items. This shortcoming in current law explains why the U.S. Intellectual Property Enforcement Coordinator supports H.R. 3668 as stated in her annual recent report to Congress. This bill not only appropriately recognizes the need to treat crimes involving counterfeit medications more seriously, but also requires the Justice Department to prioritize its investigatory and prosecutorial efforts with respect to these crimes. I'm particularly pleased that during a Judiciary Committee's markup of the bill, an amendment offered by my colleague, Congressman Bobby Scott, was adopted that would direct the Attorney General to give increased priority to efforts to investigate and prosecute these offenses. As amended, this measure appropriately recognizes that while penalty increases may be warranted, effective deterrence depends mostly on the likelihood of apprehension and conviction of offenders. I commend the efforts of my colleagues, Congressmember Patrick Meehan and Congresswoman Linda Sanchez, for introducing this important legislation. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 3668, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I yield as much time as he may consume to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Meehan, who is the sponsor of this legislation.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 3668, the Counterfeit Drug Penalty Enhancement Act. I want to thank the distinguished gentleman from Texas for his leadership on this issue on the Judiciary Committee, and I also want to thank my colleagues from the other side of the aisle as we rise in a truly bipartisan, bicameral fashion in working for the passage of this very important legislation. So I appreciate the kind remarks from the gentlelady from California in support of this bill as well. Like so many other health care costs, prescription drugs are expensive and the cost is rising. So what we are beginning to see increasingly is people going online to make the purchases for those drugs. It's an issue that I saw firsthand as a federal prosecutor when we began to work on the proliferation of illegal drug sales over the Internet. Oftentimes, the people who are purchasing these are senior citizens. Online, there's not the kinds of protections that would exist traditionally as there are in a pharmacy setting, where not only do you have the ability to have the advice of a pharmacist, but the certainty of the chain of custody, so to speak, for the drugs that have been traveling in commerce. What we're finding is, of the illegal drugs, close to 90% of those that are sold illegally or are in fact counterfeit are sold online. And we're not just talking about mislabeled pills here. The fakes could actually contain no active ingredients, the wrong active ingredient, or even a contaminant. The counterfeit medicines pose a threat because of the conditions under which they are manufactured, often in unregulated locations and frequently under unsanitary conditions. In many instances, they contain none of the active pharmaceutical ingredients found in the authentic medicine, or are in incorrect dosage. In others, they may contain toxic ingredients such as heavy metals, arsenic, pesticides, rat poison, brick dust, floor wax, and even leaded highway paint. In the worst-case scenario, the medicine itself is a fake, and the result of the counterfeit sale is harm to the patient's health and safety. And while all types of drugs are counterfeited, what's a particular concern to me is the illicit market in significant drugs, cancer drugs like Avastin and Alta, ADH drugs like Adderall, pain treatments like Vicodin. This is an economic harm. Estimates are that there's $75 billion worth of counterfeit drug sales annually. But it's not just the economic harm that is of the greatest concern to me. It is the consumer safety associated with this. The World Health Organization, in their estimates, predicted or believed that counterfeit drugs caused 100,000 deaths worldwide last year. This is an issue of such importance it even captured the attention of the world governments, with the GA leaders at Camp David issuing a declaration on the need to address this international crisis. Today, it's illegal to introduce illegal drugs, counterfeit drugs, into interstate commerce. But the penalties are no different than those assessed for trafficking other counterfeit products, such as movies or fashion products like purses. That's why our bill seeks to have sentencing laws reflect the seriousness of the crime. The bill increases fines to a maximum of $4 million for the first offense and $8 million for subsequent offenses, and prison terms for a maximum of 10 to 20 years. This is an overdue and needed change, and I can say that as a prosecutor. I'd like to thank Congressman Sanchez for her leadership on this issue. I want to thank my colleague from Pennsylvania, the Congressman Tom Marino, for his hard work on the Judiciary Committee, working with Chairman Smith on this issue. And I want to thank the members in both parties that should be recognized for bringing this critical measure to the floor so expeditiously. I encourage my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to lend their support for this very important legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back my time.
Gentlewoman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back. Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I'll yield back the balance of my time as well.
Question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 3668 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until approximately